In this video, I'm going to give you 3 ways to instantly improve your communication with your dog. So let's get started with number 1, the day of silence. Go 1 full day without speaking a word to your dog. If you need them to do something, you have to make them do it physically. And I know you're thinking right now, Miles, why would I do that? That sounds very difficult for no reason. Well, I'll give you 2 reasons why I recommend you do this. The first reason is that it's difficult for so many dog owners to do. A lot of dog owners, they rely on their verbal communication with the dog to try to communicate with them. But in reality, the dog doesn't understand your verbal cues as well as you think they do. You're almost using this as a crutch, or it's like you're creating a facade around how good your communication actually is. And when you strip away that verbal communication, when you don't use any words and you have to communicate with them non-verbally, that's when all the holes in your communication start to reveal. And I'll touch more on that in just a second. And the second reason I like this one so much is because you become aware. You become aware of all of the moments throughout the day when you just speak to the dog for no particular reason. Just because you want to hear yourself talk, essentially. You're just speaking at the dog. There's no intent behind your words. They're not interpreting anything from it. It's just white noise to the dog. I speak to my dog all the time for no particular reason as well, but it's important if you're gonna do this to at least become aware of it, because a lot of dog owners just do it without even realizing. Now, the reason this day of silence is so interesting of an exercise is because dogs exist in a nonverbal world. They exist in a physical world. They communicate physically. That is the language of dogs. And when we are training dogs, when we're teaching new behaviors, when we're removing undesirable behaviors, and we're going through the training process, all of our communication in the beginning is physical. It's all nonverbal. It's all with physical, real, tangible consequences. That's how we communicate with them in the training process. Like if you've watched any of my how-to tutorial videos, you see that all of the work in the beginning when we're teaching a dog a behavior, like the downs or the sits or the place command or the heeling, it all starts out non-verbally. No words. No words are being said. It's all non-verbal communication because that's the language of dogs. Then, once we've taught the behavior and the dog knows what we want them to do because we've taught it non-verbally in a way that they understand, then we add the verbal on top. This is purely for us as humans for convenience sake, but the words have no meaning to the dog unless it's backed by something physical. The day of silence, when you go through it, it reveals all the holes that you have as a handler in your non-verbal communication. You might find when you do this day of silence, oh man, I want my dog to go to their bed, but I can't say anything. How do I make them go to their bed? Oh man, they get off their bed. How do I get them to stay on their bed? You see, you have to learn when you're out on the walk. I want my dog to heel right next to me. How do I do that without saying anything? I need my dog to down. How do I do that without saying anything? You see, you have to rely now on your nonverbal communication with the dog. How can you use the leash to influence their behavior? How can you use your body language, your space to influence their behavior? How can you communicate with them in a way that they understand? You see, your words, your verbal communication only means something if it's backed by something physical. Now, the second way you can instantly improve your communication with your dog is say it once and make it happen, all right? The reason I like this rule is because it's so simple, but it implies 3 different things, which I really like. The first thing that this rule implies is that when we tell our dog to do something, this is a command, not a request. And I find that many dog owners are always asking their dog to do something. They're almost asking and hoping, right? They say, Luna, can you sit? And they're like hoping the dog sits. They hope, they're asking. It's like, I hope she sits right now. When you follow this rule, say it once and make it happen. This puts the owner in a different mindset. When I tell you to sit, it's sit. It's not, Luna, can you sit? You see the difference? There's a different intention behind the words of the owner. The second thing this rule implies is that if you say it, you should have a way to make it happen. See, I see a lot of dog owners who tell their dog to do things, but they don't have any way to back what they're saying physically. Very beginning stages of the training, they're at the park, dog is off the leash, the dog is off leash in the backyard. They tell Fido to come and Fido doesn't come. And there's nothing they can do about it. You see? The dog is learning in that moment that the commands are optional. And this looks different depending on where you're at in the training. If you're in the very beginning stage of the training, of course, you need a way to make the dog do it every single time you say it. You see, so this is why management is so important, and thinking ahead, being prepared is also important. Every time you're in the backyard, dog is on a long line. Every time you're in the park, dog is on a long line. Dog is always on a leash, dog always has their tools on. You're always ready, if you're gonna say it, have a way to make it happen, especially in the beginning. Later on in the training, like once your dog is fully trained, your words are enough to make it happen. But in the beginning, that is not the case. It's only the case later on because your dog assumes that it is backed by something physical. In the beginning though, you have to show them that throughout the teaching process. And the third thing this one implies is that you should only say it if it's worth making happen. You see, and I see a lot of dog owners make this mistake of always telling their dog to do stuff for no particular reason. They don't really know why. They're just always telling the dog to sit, to down. They're giving the dog all of these random commands, like inside the house even, out on the walk. They're just ushering all of these commands for no particular reason. They don't even realize they're doing it a lot of times. Like sometimes I'll be working with someone and I'll catch it. Be like, why did you tell your dog to sit right there? Like, we're just standing here doing nothing. They weren't doing anything wrong. Why did you tell them to sit? They're like, did I tell them to sit? I didn't even realize. See, they're not even aware of it. And so if you're gonna, and I'm talking in the context of once your dog is fully trained, of course, not if you're teaching a behavior, but only say it if it's worth making it happen. When you are out with your dog and you're out on a walk or something, and you give your dog a command, there should be a reason why you're giving the command. You could explain to someone why you gave them this command in this moment. You see, it's you as the handler believe it's in their best interest to do this behavior. You see, you're not just ushering out commands willy-nilly just because for the fun of it. There's a reason behind it. And just to be clear, I'm speaking in the context of a dog who's already fully trained. So like we're off leash at the park and I see some person up ahead. And so I call the dog into a heel and we heel past them. Or I see some biker coming towards us. So I put the dog into a down as they go past. You see, the dog doesn't necessarily know why I'm telling them to do this thing. They might not even want to do the thing in the moment. But I've made the call as their handler that it's in their best interest to do this thing, you see? And I'm saying this because sometimes I notice handlers who go through the training and they make a bunch of control and they tighten up and they forget to let go. They forget. And they accidentally become these micromanagers who's just looking over the dog's shoulder and just always making control every 30 seconds for no reason. And nobody knows why. And the dog has no idea why they have to do all of these things all the time. No one likes that, all right? You didn't go through the training to be a micromanager. Of course not, right? You went through the training because you want to give your dog more freedom. And when you get to that point, don't forget that. Don't forget to let go. You've got the control. Make it whenever you need it, right? It's there. You can make it at any time, but don't overstep. Let the dog be, all right? Back to the video. And the last way to instantly improve your communication with your dog is to keep your markers loaded. So in dog training, one of the ways dogs learn is through consequences. They do something and then something happens. That something that happens is either good or it's bad. And that impacts whether or not they repeat this thing that they did. One of the things that we do in training is we attach consequences to very specific behaviors that the dog performs. Right? The dog does a very specific thing and then we attach a good consequence to it, or they do something and we attach a bad consequence to it. But how does the dog know when we attach consequences, what behavior it's associated with? How do they know, right? The dog is constantly doing things on an ongoing basis. And so how do they know that this precise behavior is what led to this consequence? That's why we use markers, because markers allow us to capture the exact behavior we're attaching a consequence to. And we have two primary markers. We have our reinforcement marker, which for us is chop, and we have our punishment marker, which for us is no. We use our reward marker or our reinforcement marker to capture exact behaviors that we're looking to attach a good consequence to reinforce that behavior, to increase the frequency of that specific behavior. So think about your dog constantly performing all of these random series of behaviors, and then when they do something particular that we like, chop, right here. This behavior we're looking to attach a consequence to. And this is always followed up by a physical reward, something real, something tangible that the dog deems reinforcing. So for us in the training, it's either gonna be food, or it's gonna be a toy. I see a lot of dog owners who don't keep the marker loaded. You see, they're out, just out and about. Yes, 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 yes. No rewards following, just saying this word, right? Click, 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 chirp, 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 just chirping around willy-nilly, all right? If you're gonna have a reward marker, always follow this up with a physical reward. That's what it means to keep the marker loaded. It's supercharged. The dog has associated this sound with a tangible reward, either food or a toy. And the same goes with your punishment marker. So for us, our punishment marker is no. When the dog hears that word, no, that signals to the dog that they have just crossed a boundary and a divine consequence is now incoming. Something extremely aversive is now incoming. There is no way out. You cannot escape it. You cannot avoid it. It is incoming right now. You cross the boundary and here is the consequence. I see a lot of people, their no's don't actually mean anything to the dog, right? You've probably seen a lot of these people. Maybe you're one of them who you're out screaming at your dog, no, 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 no. And the dog has no response because they have no association with that word. When we're going through the training process and we're training a dog, the dog would rarely hear this. This is something like I'm out with the dog and they lunge at a child on their bicycle. No, divine consequence incoming. That was a terrible decision and now a horrendous consequence is incoming. Never perform this behavior again. And this creates a strong avoidance in engaging in that behavior ever again. That is what I mean by a punishment marker, okay? That is no, it's loaded. Every time the dog hears this, it is followed by a physical, real, punishing consequence. It invokes a physiological response in the dog when they hear this. You see, the dogs aren't outside right now, but if they heard me say, no, it creates a strong fear response within the dog. Immediate suppression in the behavior, in the body language of the dog. You see it. It's physiological. It's real. It's loaded. And this is something I never use. I never say this word aside from like in the very beginning stages of the training when I'm modifying behaviors. But later on, once the dog is fully trained, they almost never hear this word unless they cross some serious boundary. You see? That's the difference. A lot of people don't have that. They don't have any way to make the dog stop doing something because it's not loaded. Those are 3 ways you can instantly improve your communication with your dog. It's probably super dark right now, but I hope this helps.